Hi, welcome to Sarawak. I've been contemplating doing this for a while, and due to the COVID control measures that are underway throughout Malaysia and much of the rest of the world, I've had a lot of extra time on my hands to see what I can do. This first video is a bit of me talking about what I want for the channel, so here goes. I'm someone who likes to make things, and I enjoy learning how to make things and how things are made. So as this channel goes on, I hope to be able to expand beyond what I can make and to go out and find other people from around Sarawak who can do things that I don't know how to do and present their works to the world. I want this channel to have a reasonable amount of woodwork, as that's something that I really do enjoy doing, but I would also like to be able to create some videos to show people how to do their own projects. And in the spirit of that, I don't want to remove any of the times that I make mistakes, as it gives me an opportunity to show how it was fixed or how I hit it, which is as much a part of learning a skill as how to do it properly in the first place. Because, well, everyone makes mistakes. Some people just know how to hide it better than others. I'm not a master in any of the things that I'll do in these videos. There's an old saying, jack of all trades, and that really does apply, but this quote is often misrepresented to seem that that's in some way a bad thing. A jack of all trades, a master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. Basically, it means having a wide range of knowledge on many subjects. Often means that you will be the one capable of solving the many small problems, either in your home or your workplace, and that ability shouldn't be underestimated in its value. So, on to this video. This bowl took inspiration from the shape of a Saké cup that I'd seen, and I don't actually know what wood this is. When I got the lathe, I got it secondhand from a man along with a bunch of tools, and as part of the deal he threw in a huge pile of wood, and some of which I've used already. Some had to be thrown away due to severe checking, which is what cracks along the grain are called in woodworking. Some had really bad sections that I thought might fly off if they spun up too fast on the lathe, but most of them I kept. Some of them I've even tried to repair with a bit of resin, and I'm sure I'll show a few of those later. The imperfections in a piece of wood isn't really something that should cause you to immediately throw it away or ignore as a not worth having piece. And often those imperfections can be highlighted and presented in a way that makes the finished pieces all the more beautiful and unique. So if there is a piece of wood that you find that isn't perfect, see if you can make it different somehow. Some of the wood I have is local tropical hardwoods like Bellian and a few other bits and pieces. There are some foreign. I've got some Wenge and a few other things. There's some mahogany. I have no idea what really is in there, and there are some that I have no idea what they even are. So if you think you know what this wood is, feel free to write it in the comments. I'd very much appreciate knowing what it actually is. A lot of the techniques that I use and the cuts that I make are a bit different because I'm a left-hander, which means that some of the cuts are much easier, but most are a lot harder, which is why I'll often move to the back of the lathe and approach from that side. I actually had to build myself a mobile lathe stand so that I could move it around while it's outside and get to the back of it while still getting the right lighting that I needed to. I'm sure I'll show that in one of the videos as I go along. So whenever I change the speed of a video, I'll try to actually show it so that you'll be able to see down in the screen somewhere where it says 4 times speed, 2 times speed. This just gives you an idea that this isn't actually how fast it is to do. This is just something that makes the video a little bit quicker for those less interesting cuts. But also it allows you to see the shaping process much faster. Sometimes I will use carbide tools, and sometimes I'll use the more traditional of the wood turning tools. What you're seeing here is a carbide tool, and it just allows you to get through harder wood faster and with less sharpening. So if you're turning a particularly hard piece of wood and you're using the traditional high-speed steel tools, like this one that you're going to see here, this is a bowl gouge, then you'll have to end up sharpening this tool much more often, just because the high-speed tool will blunten faster than the carbide tip tools. And one of them's not better or worse than the other. There's some turners will swear by one or the other, but I just find if I use both, then I don't have to keep sharpening a gouge all the time when I'm trying to cut through the harder parts of certain woods. This here is a round nose scraper. It's designed to shave off very small amounts of wood and leave a nice finish on the end. When I first started wood turning in high school, that was what I actually had. There was very few bowl gouges available, and so a lot of what I did, I had to use a scraper as a normal gouge, and it didn't work terribly well, but it did teach me to be grateful for gouges when you have them. And what you saw there was a catch. It can happen if you're careless, or it can happen if you present at the wrong angle to the piece of wood, and that was me just being careless. But as I said earlier, I wanted to leave those mistakes in so that you could see what actually happens and how it's repaired. So you can see that it's a reasonable hole in the wood, but you are capable with wood turning of being able to just adjust the design a little bit, cut it in a bit smaller, or round out a corner a little bit more or something like that, and it allows you to make on-the-fly changes to your design. It's not the be-all and end-all. If you get a catch, you can continue on quite happily, as long as it's not breaking any part of the bowl. So this is the sanding process. It's not a very interesting thing, but I'll leave it in for some of them. It goes from 120 grit all the way up to 600 grit sandpaper, and I use a Shellac sanding sealer because some of the sanding sealers are a bit difficult to get, I'd prefer to use like a lacquer sanding sealer, but I haven't been able to find one in Sarawak. But you can get quite a lot of the shellac based stuff here, so you use what you can get. So what I'm using here is a friction polish. Now this is a shellac based friction polish, and that's just equal parts of shellac, denatured alcohol, and usually like boiled linseed oil or something like that. So you can make it at home. It's not that difficult to produce if you really want to. You can buy the separate ingredients and mix it together to get different build volumes, which will give you a different gloss on the outside. So here I'm using a parting tool to determine where I want the edge of the bowl to be, so how thick I want the wall of the bowl to be. And this gives you a really clear idea of where the edge of the bowl is going to be, so you don't get too close and end up cutting it thinner than you want it to be. So I slowed this one down to 1/4 time because I particularly liked the way that the shavings sprayed out towards the camera while I was watching the footage. I thought it looked really good. This is using the bowl gouge again just to hollow it out. Now the problem with a lot of the wood that I've got is that it's been sitting around for so many years that the outside of the wood has had time to really dry out, which means that the outside of the wood is a lot harder than the inside of the wood, where it's still got a little bit of moisture left to it. So for the outside of the wood, I've often got to use the carbide tip tools, which just make cutting through the bowl a lot easier. But once you get into the bowl, you can go back to using the more traditional gouges. This is a swan-necked hollowing tool. It allows you to get into underneath the lip of the bowl and make a nice little curve inside. And this tool is specifically designed for hollowing out parts that are difficult to reach. And because of that hook in the neck, you actually have to pull the stand out a little bit further to make sure that it is resting on the straight part of the tool. Otherwise it will just keep twisting around in your hand and it's very difficult to control. And this is just a fairly standard skew, and I find them quite nice to just round over edges on a bowl. For the lip, it's just a personal preference. A lot of people will use a bowl gouge to do it, and it's fine to do it that way as well, probably better, but I just find I like to use the skew. And again, this was sanded through to 600 with the sanding sealer and the friction polish applied, and you'll see the finished product after. And when you apply friction polish, the pressure and the speed that you apply heats up the surface, and that will melt the wax that's in the shellac, which is what gives the nice shiny coating at the end that you'll see. Thank you for watching. I hope it's been entertaining and informative. And remember that this was made in Sarawak.